The greatest issue that has led to this development, the greatest historical event, has been immigration. Up until this point, any new territories that became Orthodox via mission. And so missionaries were sent from other churches, and therefore the jurisdiction of the missionized territory would be that of the mother church. But when we have immigration, which was the great story of the United States development, people brought with them the expression of the faith that they had from their homelands. And so that would be the Greek expression, the Serbian, the Ukrainian, etc. And they also turned back to their own jurisdictional mothers, the mother churches back home, for their priests, for their hierarchs, and therefore, rather than one uniform jurisdiction that missionized a particular territory, you have now multiple threads going back to the homelands, the mother territories. The big pushes of immigration occurred in the late 19th and early 20th century. So that is when the fracture really occurred of disunity. But with periodic immigrations that are ongoing throughout the 20th century, and even really now, I mean, it still keeps going on. Every time the people who are newborn in the country of America, okay, people who are first, second, third, fourth generations now, feel the need for unity, you have constantly that being upset by the immigration that's ongoing that still looks to a more fragmented reality. They still want their mother countries involved, whereas you have now an embedded, born populace who wants an American expression. So now you have actually two ways of looking at how the church and wishing for the church to be, and their intention. Number one, there's no voice of the Orthodox outside of their own little ghettoized community. In other words, we have no visible presence in the greater American program. Case in point, I think that brings it home most clearly, was when 9/11 occurred, and the only actual church that was destroyed when the two towers went down was an Orthodox church. Nobody knows that, okay? And when there was the nation came together immediately after 9/11, I think it was the next day, for a national prayer service. The only community that really was not represented by any hierarchy whatsoever were the Orthodox. Now here we lost a church, had no place, had no voice. And I think perhaps the people who led the worship service didn't know which hierarch to call, because there's so many of us. And in any case, we have no presence, and that means that we're not effective. We're not effective if we want to do community outreach, if we want to do mission, which of course is one of the great commands of Christians, is to go out and transform the world and missionize the world. When we are bickering with one another, we can't go out and reach out to others. People will question the validity of our statement if we can't present it with a unified voice. And in addition, we can't do other things like charity work. We are fragmented in just doing the good deeds that a church needs to do. We can't share resources. We have trouble sharing educational resources. I teach at the small Serbian Orthodox seminary. They have a great deal of trouble with fundamental resources like libraries. But there are so many Orthodox around who could provide that, but they're not Serbs. They're Greeks or they're people in the OCA. So we don't have those resources. And then just a sense that we are a global community that gets torn into little pieces, and you begin to think of yourself as only a national or an isolated community. It draws the boundaries in, whereas Christianity really should be a faith that expands outward. It's exclusivistic when we should not be that way. We need to be inclusivistic. We are here to embrace the world, not to keep it outside of our walls. And so those are some of the key problems that I see. The people to whom we speak will question our commitment and our message, because they will say, well, which one am I talking to? The Greeks, the Russians, and if you can't love one another, how are you actually going to promote the love of Christ in the world? If you get your own act together first, then I might take you seriously. So there's that, can you be an effective voice if you have your own house out of order, so to speak? In addition, though, it's a matter of resources. We need to collect enough people, enough manpower, enough physical resources, money, books, icons, building materials, clothing, etc., things that you need to bring to a community. If we are not united, first of all, we don't even know about each other's problems and areas of work to support one another. And secondly, we tend to restrict our resources to our own little group. Even if we know about another group, we'll think, well, we really should attend to our own little group first. So therefore, those resources don't end up going to the places where they can be most effective. So both from an internal problem and from the way others look at us, I think it affects our message.